So, hello, hello, hello. I am Zakiya Monique, Master Relationship Strategist, Transformational Speaker, best-selling author of Killer Connections. Y'all already know all of that stuff. But today I am here to talk about God's timing in relationships. Let's talk about the Ishmael itch and the unseemly queen. Okay? The Ishmael itch and the unseemly queen. So, let's start with the Ishmael itch. And this comes when we do it ourselves. Okay, when we do it ourselves. So, uh, one sec. So the Ishmael itch. The Ishmael itch is when we do it ourselves. And so I was seeking the Lord because I was like, I really want to talk about what happens when we don't wait. And let me be the first one to tell you from experience, hear me clearly. When we don't wait on the Lord, we're going to have to wait on the Lord. Okay? It ain't no way around it. You might think you have evaded the situation, but hear me clearly. If you don't wait on the Lord, you still going to wait on the Lord. He will bring you right back around, full circle, to the very thing you thought you was getting away with, and you still going to wait. Okay? So don't ever think that you're getting out of the waiting period. You just not. All right. So I'm just waiting to pull my notes up here because I just transferred them. So give me 1 second. Just waiting to pull them up. Sometimes it's a little slow. Sometimes it's a little slow and I need you to come on. All right. So with regard to the Ishmael itch, many of us have read the story for many, many years. We've talked about, we know about Abraham, Sarah, we know about them laughing, we know all about that. So I'm sure that whatever I talk about in the next whatever time, it's not going to be new. But the Ishmael itch is when you do it yourself. And I want to present some things and hopefully it'll hit a different perspective for you. Because, it's always my objective to just enhance or to change your perspective or just present something that may make you say, I never thought about it that way. So, from before his birth, Ishmael was a source of painful trouble. That can be found over in Genesis 16. After Sarah or Sarai, that she hadn't been changed over to Sarah at that time, she gave him the handmaid. She gave Abram the handmaiden and said, go into her and go ahead and conceive, because she couldn't have kids. And so at some point she said, well, let me just give you my handmaiden, because instead of her waiting for God, she decided to do it herself. She decided to say, let me manufacture a situation. Now, some of us can be guilty of that. We've manufactured friendships, we manufacture relationships. We're going to make it be what we want it to be. And sometimes God will say, okay, you want a king, children of Israel, after I told you you don't need one? Okay. Here's so. Sometimes God will allow you to have what you want, to let you see that that ain't what you want, to bring you under subjection of his plan. Because after you get whooped up, and I'm talking about hit in the back of the head with the sandal, after you get whooped on, you then start to say, okay, Lord, what would you have me to do? Because I'm going to come over here and sit down. I'll speak for me. After God gave me a way of escape, he didn't have to worry about me getting bound up no more. I'm talking about to the point where I would move to the point where he had to push me to do something. So sometimes God will allow you to have what you think you want to show you that it ain't what you want and to show you that he has the best in mind for you, for me, for us. So Sarai decided that, all right, we just gonna go and speed this process up because I'm old, Abram, and you too. Shoot. He talking about we having babies and having kids, but like, God, do you know how old we are? How many of us have said that? God, like God don't know how old we are. Like he wasn't there when we was born. My grandfather used to, it's three of us that are kind of in the same age range. And my grandfather used to say, who the oldest? And one day, me and my smart mouth said, well, dang, wasn't you there? I sure did. You there? You older than all of us. How you know? Anyway, the whole thing in a nutshell is Abram said, all right. So behold, he went into the handmaiden instead of correcting Sarah and saying, no, we're not doing that. See, ladies, side note, we have a lot of influence. And this is why we need to make sure our hearts are in the right place when our God ordained spouse, kingdom spouse, whatever you want to call it, when our spouse comes, when God sends him, when God sends him, or if a man is listening to this, when God sends her or he takes you to her to find her, our hearts need to be pure. Fellas, your heart need to be pure so that you know when to correct your wife and how to correct your wife. Because you can sternly handle somebody. And ladies, our hearts need to be pure because we can either influence or manipulate. We can either influence or we can manipulate. And in this situation, Sarai was in full manipulation because as soon as he went in Hagar, and as soon as Hagar got pregnant, Sarah was pissed, so mad that she stopped dealing with Hagar, so mad that Hagar fled, so mad that she said, I don't want to see her. But didn't you? Aren't you the one who said it? Okay. So point number one. Point number one. Whatever you produce when you do it yourself becomes a source of a painful trouble. It becomes a source of painful trouble. Proverbs 10 and 22 says, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow to it. What you get under your own energy, you have to keep under your own energy. When you lie or cheat to get it, you got to lie or cheat to keep it. I knew a man, he had children, multiple women, he beat on women, all this type of stuff. Kids everywhere. By the time he settled down, he ended up settling down with the one who outlasted everybody else. She was the side chick who outlasted everybody else. All right, well, I'm gonna marry you then because you still standing. And let me tell y'all something. Don't let nobody settle for you, okay? Don't fall for the settlement plan. Don't let nobody settle for you. But he married her. And let me tell you what happened to that man. That man had to watch every one of his daughters be beaten, mistreated, suffer with the bondage of addiction, or settle. He watched all of his sons repeat every cycle of his life, every stage of his life. He watched every son repeat one of the cycles of every stage of his life. He was with a mate who was not connected to him on a level where she knew what something was wrong with him, and as a result, he died alone. Being with your God ordained spouse, your kingdom spouse, the person that God brings you, can save your life because you are connected. That person can look at you and tell when something's off. They can hear you. They know the combination of words that you use. They don't even have to hear your voice. It can be a text. They can tell when you don't feel good or you're not good. Because a part of them is in you and y'all intertwined. Isaac was born free. Ishmael was born the son of a slave. Shortcuts lead to setbacks. When we do not adhere to God's instructions or his process, sin is usually the result. James 4 and 17 says, therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is a sin. Over in Romans 6, it says that when we are bound to sin, we are slaves to it. Ishmael was born a slave to the sin that was set before him before he even got here. When we allow God's instructions or process to lead us, we're prepared for the promise. But when we don't wait, although the thing person, the place, the job, the house, the car, or whatever God has promised us is sure. I heard a man once say, a blessing out of season can be a curse. Because it's not time. It's not time yet. Now, that ain't in the Bible, but I got some Bible for you. Because Ecclesiastes 3 said there's a time for all things. So when we skip the process, we may be subject to that thing before it's done. Now, I like to bake pound cakes. So I want you to think of a cake. If you want that pound cake to be moist and right, you got to let it alone and let it bake. And in the appointed time, you have to take it out. But even when you take it out, you still have to take the time to let it rest. And if you don't let it rest and you try to flip it too quick or you try to move it too quick, then guess what happens? It apart. If it's a moist cake and it fall apart, you got a whole bunch of moist chunks. If it's desert dry because you overcooked it, it crumbles like cornbread. But either way, it will fall apart. Some people that God has said are for us are not ready yet. They need a process just the same way. And if we're honest, some of us not ready yet either. Let me ask you a couple questions. Do you know your purpose? Do you have the capacity for a man? A man, not a male, not a boy, not nobody trying to figure it out. But do you have the capacity for somebody who knows exactly what they want and exactly how they plan to get it because they following God? Do you have the capacity for that? Or are you intimidated by that? Because some of us have dealt with some pookies and ray-rays so long. Some of us have dealt with some foolishness and bootlegs and jacklegs so long. Some of us have dealt with some jack of all trades and master of none for so long that when we find somebody that's sure, we're intimidated. Do you have the capacity for a man? Do you have your children, young or old, in order? Because sometimes the way that we cling to our children, the way that the relationship that we have with our children, our adult children especially, is not healthy. And you can't think that a man that is your protector, your provider, and everything else, your partner, your priest, that's going to come here and watch, he's not going to watch a grown child disrespect you and bring you and reduce you to tears and not going to interject. And now you got confusion because you didn't do your work before he got there. Is your house in order? Are your finances in order? Have you dealt with the insecurities and rejection issues from previous relationships? Because Lord knows we all have them. If the answer to any of these is no, or I'm working on it, then you still in the oven too. Or maybe you're cooling, which is a shorter process. But the point is you got work to do too. So stop staring out the window, waiting for him to come. Let him find you like Boaz found Ruth, working. That's the part they don't tell us about. They talk about, they romanticize the Boaz and the Ruth story so much, but they don't talk about the fact that Ruth's reputation preceded her. So that means she had already been doing good. She had already been well spoken of. Some of our reputations is like, ooh wee. And don't get me wrong, no condemnation. But some of us need to work on how we treat other people. Because that's what preceded Ruth, the way she treated somebody that she could have left. Then Ruth got there and worked. She was willing to glean. She was willing to take the scraps. She was willing to go out and work for what she wanted. She didn't say, let me show a little shoulder and a little leg and let me use what I got to get what I want. She said, no, I'll come and get what's left for me and Naomi. I'm gonna make sure Naomi good. And make sure I'm good. So we romanticize it, but we don't stop and think about some of these points. You have work to do. If you're watching, if you're looking out the window, is he coming today? Is he coming today? Is he coming today? If that's what you're doing, if that's what I'm doing, we out of pocket. We out of order. Because we have work to do. So point number 2, whatever you produce when you do it yourself is linked to a perpetual cycle of bondage. And sometimes that bondage looks like stress, domestic violence, and struggle because you are trying to force something to fit. Imagine trying to put the pound cake back together after it fell apart. You ain't got enough hands to hold it. I bake a lemon pound cake, and the lemon pound cake is so moist, sometimes it fall apart. It really does. That's one of the hardest cakes for me to bake because it is so moist that sometimes it literally will fall apart in sections. And usually what I do is just cut it up and sell slices, which works. But it's such a popular cake. You know what I'm saying? People order it all the time, but it's a hit or miss because it's so moist. But if I try to piece that cake back together and hold it, baby, I need another setup. I need about 2, 3 people come hold this piece and come hold that piece and come hold that piece. That's what we look like when we're trying to force something to happen. Because what you force, you will always have to fix. Sometimes that bondage looks like insecurity because you're constantly reminded of the failed process. The failed process. There's something beautiful about a story coming together in the right timing. It's effortless, meaning it ain't hard to love the person. Like, oh, here you come again. It ain't hard to love the person. It glorifies God. It will produce fruit, something bigger than itself. It is exhausting for somebody to always have to assure you that you are the one that they want because you didn't take time to become healed and whole, and you drug all your insecurities and rejection issues into the relationship or the friendship. So now all day, you know me, you know me, do you know me, do you know me, do you know me, do you know me, all day. You sure you want to be with me? I love you. You all right? It looked like you was mad about something. You you sure you sure this what you want? Because I mean, you've been quiet the last couple of days. It's exhausting for a person to have to always assure you that they're not gonna run out on you with the next person because that's what they did when they got you. The stench of insecurity is enough to turn a person off for good. Confidence attracts, insecurity distracts. When you know what it is and you know who you are, and they know what it is and they know who they are, now we can move forward because we already got that part established. The foundation is locked. By the time God brings him and y'all get with each other, y'all done went through such a process. You like, look here, I ain't playing with you. You ain't playing with me. Look, I love you. You love me. We ain't finna hide that. We ain't hide that from nobody. And what we not finna do is let nobody, no third party, come up in here and do nothing because we done went through hell and high water to get here. That's why God takes us through a process so that when we get to the end of the process, we are at the end of ourselves and we are not for it. Tell your sister to go on. You ain't got to tell him that though. He already told her. You already checked your mama. You already got stuff in order. But when you don't, and when you do it yourself, perpetual cycle of bondage, and you'll be trying to figure out how can we fix it. And God will say, the foundation is destroyed. And as I discussed previously, the Bible says, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And if the prayer of the righteous availeth much and they can't do nothing, then sometimes you got to look at that foundation and say, you know what, anything I build on this ain't gonna work. So sometimes you do have to say goodbye. Now, Ishmael was considered to be an obedient son until Isaac entered the family. So now here come the promise. After all that laughing, after he done went in Hagar, after she done got pissed, the Hagar done ran all this drama because they couldn't wait. Because the weight of the weight was heavy. And I get it. You got to understand, I know. The weight of the weight is heavy. So it was said in the notes, and this is amazing. I'm telling you, I couldn't have come up with this myself. I promise you I couldn't. Nothing but the Spirit of God. It was said that Ishmael was like 17 and Isaac was like 3, and they was having conflict. Baby, Ishmael, baby, you about grown. How you beefing with a 3-year-old? Baby, baby, you about grown. Why are you beefing with a 3-year-old? You want me to tell you how? Because when the counterfeit sees the love that one has for the promised one, the chosen one, the appointed one, the anointed one. There will be conflict every time. But it wasn't meant to be that way because the counterfeit wasn't supposed to be there. It wasn't supposed to be no beefing between the 17 and the 3-year-old because the 17-year-old wasn't supposed to be there. I want to turn your attention to 1 Samuel. Elkanah. Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children. You can find all of this in 1 Samuel 1, verses 2 through 20. Peninnah had children. She was popping them out. Bop, 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 bop. Hannah was barren. So Peninnah would torment Hannah because she couldn't have children. But it really wasn't that reason that Peninnah was taunting Hannah. It was a little piece of a scripture that let me know why Peninnah was really, really, really vexed with Hannah. It wasn't because she had kids and she couldn't have kids. That wasn't it. It was because she knew that Elkanah loved Hannah. The counterfeit will always be mad, always be jealous, envious, because they hate how this person loves you. And they can always tell because the way that they love you, the way they look at them, the way they respond to them, the way they protect them is different. There was always and will always be conflict between the chosen and the counterfeit because the counterfeit represents the flesh where no good thing dwells. Romans 7 and 18. And the chosen represents the spirit, which serves as a connection with God and his mercy and grace. So the counterfeit is bound to be envious of the favor, the mercy, the hand of God, the anointing of God. And when we learn that envy and strife open up the door to every evil work, that tells us right there that now we have all kinds of stuff that enters the equation. Because if the counterfeit is envious, now the envy opens up the door. Strife opens up the door to every evil work. This is how you get witchcraft involved. This is how you get all kinds of stuff involved. This is how you get murder involved. Remember Cain and Abel? Somebody got envious and what happened? Murder. And so to wrap this up, point number 3, whatever you produce will represent the flesh when you do it yourself. And even if you try to pull it over to the spirit, you will always have to keep pulling it over to the spirit. You will always have to keep pulling it over to the spirit. Always have to keep trying to pull it over to the spirit. Conflict will abide because the spirit is in you and the flesh is in it. So you will always have to keep pulling it over to the spirit. All right. So next up is the unseemly queen. The unseemly queen. Now, here we're talking about Esther, right? And we all know the story of Esther as well. Pretty much what happened was Esther was orphaned. Okay, she didn't have either one of her parents. And so her first cousin, Mordecai, he adopted her. You know, he took her on as his own child. And the king at that time threw a party. He was partying for probably about, I think it's 7 days or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but he was partying. And he decided, you know what? Go get my wife. At the time, his wife was Vashti. Now, some people call her Vashti, whatever. You know, her, Queen Vashti. Go get my wife, because I want to show you, she fine. She fine. And the next thing you know, the wife said, I'm not coming out there. I ain't fooling with him, and, he drunk. I ain't about to be bothered. Now, of course, I'm ad-libbing. That just makes it sound so much better. But, so he was like, what'd she say? Like, wait, what? And when they told him what she said, some of the men, some of the other men in his cabinet, courts or whatever, was like, well, if you let her get away with that, then all of our wives gonna think that, that's how we roll too. And he was like, oh, we can't have that. No, we can't have that. So he decided that he was gonna, do away with her. Now he been drinking and all of that. Do away with her. She gotta go. So he throws her, put her out. He made a impulsive decision, put her out. So now the hunt is on for a new queen. So he wake up the next day and it said he remembered her. So now he feel bad. He like, oh man, I didn't put my woman at. I didn't put my woman out. Oh man. So now the hunt is on for a new queen because he can't go against his decree. So he had, okay, new queen. And so the new queen comes, well, not the new queen, but they had virgins, several virgins they went collected. And so Mordecai heard about it and he went, got Esther. Her name was Hadassah also. So he went, got Esther and he said, come on, because I want you to get in this contest. It's like a little, almost kind of like equivalent to a beauty contest. So, because he like, I want the one that looked the best and know the best, whatever. So he went and got her and she entered into the running and it was known to be 6 months of this and 6 months of that. So it's like a year process. And so, he put her in there, she young virgin, and so she had favor. Long story short, because you can read it yourself over in Esther. Uh he picked her. He said, he shut it down. I don't need nobody else. In 10 months, I think it was the 10th month, it said he picked Esther. He said, all right, that's how we roll. And so he picks Esther, and Mordecai was at the gates. He's at the king's gates, and he heard two guys plotting to kill the king. And he told Esther, and Esther told the king. The king wrote it he had it in his chronicle book. He had a book of things, I guess for him to, I call this little notebook, King's notebook. But he had the chronicle book, and he wrote it down that, Mordecai saved my life, period. All right, take that and put that back. And so I'm ad-libbing, y'all, so don't try to say I'm adding, to the word of God. I'm just ad-libbing. Y'all can read it yourself. So after he sent the book back, he said, all right, kill them, hang them, because you don't plot against the king. You don't come for the king. So they hung the men. But instead of the king rewarding Mordecai, he promotes Haman. Oh, well, okay. So that threw us for a loop, right? Now Haman was full of Haman. Okay. Haman was full of Haman. Haman was narcissistic. Haman liked to hear himself talk. Haman liked to talk about him, honey. Okay. Haman loved him. So there was a decree that because he was over all of the princes and everything, that everybody needed to bow to Haman. And Mordecai was like, semicolon, not me, right? So when Mordecai decided that he was not going to bow to Haman, Haman was like, oh, you think you somebody. Watch this. So Haman said, so Haman went and told the king, hey, so yeah, bro don't want to bow to me, and him and his people, they da 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 da, went on. And so, the king was like, all right, he went right along what Haman said. And part of what Haman said was that not only are we going to destroy Mordecai, but since I heard he a Jew, we're gonna go ahead and wipe them out too. Not realizing that the queen was a Jew because she, in her process, had been advised to never advise them that she was a Jew. And because she stuck to the script, they didn't know she was a Jew. So when the decree came out, Mordecai realized, oh my God, I didn't cause this for my people. My people finna perish. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord. And so what ends up happening is Mordecai goes to the streets. Somebody hurt when they go to the streets and rip their clothes off and they got sackcloth and ashes and they just saying, Lord, help, I don't understand this. You're going to let them destroy our people. And then he realized, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Esther's in there. Esther's in there. I need to talk to Esther. So they sent the word through somebody that they could trust. So they had some dialogue. They was exchanging words. So he said, look, Esther, they finna destroy the people. And you a Jew. You can't let them destroy us. And Esther was like, hey, Mordecai told her, you got to go to the king. You got to go to the king. And Esther sent a kite back to him and said, uh-uh, I can't go to the king because if I go to the king, he gonna kill me. You ain't supposed to go to the king unless he sent for you. So no. Mordecai said, listen here, okay? I told y'all I'm ad-libbing. He said, listen here. Don't think because you in that king's house that they won't find out you a Jew and kill you too. Let's be clear, okay? And have you ever thought that maybe, just maybe, you were raised up to be queen for such a time as this? So he shook her right on the loose, right? After he shook her on the loose, she said, oh. So she said, all right. So she sent the kite back to him. She said, I tell you what, you go get the people. You collect all the people and you tell them to fast for me because I'm going to go before them, but not before y'all fast for 3 days. I want y'all to drink nothing. I want y'all to eat nothing. Now, let me tell you the side note. If that was in today's time, Esther would have been in trouble because, baby, you tell somebody to turn their plate down, they act like you cussed them out and said you was going to kill them. Just imagine if your life was on the line today and you had to tell everybody you was kin to in your family that they had to turn their plate down for 3 days and they couldn't eat or drink, you'd be in trouble, whether you want to admit it or not. But we're going to carry on. And so what happened was, after 3 days, Esther said, it's on. I'm going. And so she put on her royal clothes and she went to see the king. She went to see the king. So let me pause right here and let me just tell you. Point number one, when you adhere to God's plans and process, God will reverse the plans of the enemy to harm you and release his blood to protect you in all your ways. He will reverse the plans of the enemy to harm you and release his blood to protect you in all your ways. I say that because guess what happened? When she went to the king, he didn't even say, you ain't supposed to be here. Get her. No, he said none of that. You know what he said? Baby, what you need? What's wrong? I didn't say it like that. So again, I have to keep telling y'all to read it for yourself. But he said, what's wrong? What's wrong? She said, well, I wanted to know if we could have a banquet. And he said, well, yeah, yeah, babe, it's no problem. We can have a banquet. She said, well, I'm gonna take care of the banquet, but I just want me, you, and Haman there. And he said, okay. And so they let Haman know. And of course, Haman, because Haman was full of Haman was bragging. He went and told everybody, yeah. Ha, yeah. Sucks to be you because guess what? They want me and only me to come to the banquet. So he told everybody, he bragging, yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing about people who are narcissistic and the thing about people who are full of themselves is they tend to keep people around them that are weak because those weak people are the only ones that's going to sit there and listen to that. Okay. All right. And so they don't want anybody that's going to challenge them around them. And so Haman had a whole bunch of weak people. They called them his wise men, but though they weren't really wise, right? And so he had these wise men, quote unquote, and I'm using air quotes around him and his wife, right? And she was about weak too. So they, he bragging to them and he telling them this and telling them that. And he like, yeah, but Mordecai wouldn't bow to me and I'm tired of him and da 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 da. And they said, well, you know what, why don't you build gallows to hang him? Let's set him up. Let's hang him. And he said, yeah, bet that's a good idea. And he set out to do it. But I just told you, God will reverse the plans of the enemy to harm you and release his blood to protect you in all your ways. Because never did you hear me say that when that decree went out that they were going to kill all the Jews, you never heard me say that Mordecai and Esther started plotting against Haman. You never heard me say they started plotting to get revenge. You heard me say that they fell on their knees to pray and fast. So they went to God, right? So it's banquet time. Nope, not yet. I'm sorry. What happened was, before that, the enemy, not the enemy, but the king couldn't sleep that night. He couldn't rest. So he told them, go get my book of Chronicles. Go get my book. Go get my notebook. So he went and got his notebook. He said, doggone it, I forgot that Mordecai saved my life. I'm gonna do something. I got to celebrate him. I got to promote him. I got to do something for him. Hmm. Okay. I'm gonna have Haman do. Ha ha. Ain't that how it works? I'm gonna have Haman, drape him up and celebrate because he saved my life. So the king said, Haman, yeah, so I need you to, get the best clothes and stuff, and I need you to drape him, and I need you to, put him on a horse, and I need you to celebrate him for saving my life. Haman blood boiling because he hates Mordecai. And now you getting ready to make me celebrate him in front of everybody. Meanwhile, it's this gallows I done built right here too that I plan to kill him on. But now you making me celebrate this man. Okay. Yeah, all right. So Haman go back to his people because he need to talk about this thing. How many of us do that same thing? We got to go talk about this thing to somebody. So he go back to the weaklings to talk about that thing. And as the weaklings are, you know what they did? They retracted. They said, well, maybe you shouldn't try to kill him then. If he got that much pull with the king, like, maybe you might want to rethink this thing. Now Haman probably looking at them like, now the Bible don't say this part, but Haman probably looking at them like, what? Y'all the one told me to build y'all the one told me to build a gallows. Now y'all wanna, all right, that's what weak people do. Weak people throw the rock and hide their hand. Weak people are like vermin. They like vermin, they like mice. They leave drippings everywhere they go, but as soon as you cut the light on, they run. And so what ends up happening is before he can even talk to them or come to some resolve, it's banquet time. It's banquet time. Time to go to the banquet. So he like, well, I'll deal with it later. So he goes to the banquet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to type that one twice. I'm sorry. But when you go to the banquet, he went to the banquet and once again the king said, babe, what do you want? What do you need? He said, well, there's someone who wanted to destroy all of my people, and she went into a spiel about how somebody had said they wanted to destroy all of the Jews and all of this and all of that. And he said, who? Who? Who want to hurt you and your people? Who? Show me right now. Show me. Tell me who it is. She said, him, and pointed at Haman. Hmm. See, when you adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse the bloodline curses and release his favor for you and your descendants to live. To live. Some of the relationships he's putting together is for the purpose of breaking curses, for the purpose of turning some things around, for the purpose of him to releasing his favor so that people can live. This is bigger than love. This is bigger than you. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than us being together because we dress alike and we cute. This is so the blood of Jesus will stop stacking up at the cross because we don't use it. When you adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse the bloodline curses and release his favor for you and your descendants to live. Me and my descendants to live. Us, our descendants to live. People are dying in their sins and we playing. We looking out the window for a man and people are dying, waiting for us to show up in purpose, on purpose, and people are dying because we looking for a man and God say, look to me. Look to me. I'll give you what you want. I'll give you what you need. Look to me. When you adhere to God's plan and his process, He'll reverse that curse. He'll reverse those curses. And in place of the curse, he'll release favor and blessings for the descendants to live. So after he found out it was Haman, needless to say, and point number two probably should have been this one. That's probably what it was. That the very gallows that was meant for Mordecai is the one that Haman ended up dying on. When we adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse the curse of even the counterfeits. And he'll release his blood to block those curses, but to release blessings instead. But the most beautiful, all of these are beautiful, but the most beautiful and magical, I don't even want to call it magical, I'm sorry. But what's amazing, that's the word. What's amazing to me is that when you adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse the bond of conditional and physical love and release and replace it with an agape bond and agape love. And let me tell you how I know that. Vashti was put away for not coming when the king called her. Put away. No questions asked. You out of here. Now, he had been drinking, I think, about 7 days. They've been partying 7 days or whatever. So he was pretty lit, I'm sure. But he had been drinking, he probably had been a little sipping, I think. No, I'm thinking. When Esther had come before him. I don't think it said he had been drinking then. But when Esther came, his posture was protection. When Esther came before him, every time she came before him, he asked her, "What do you need? What can I do for you? What's your request, baby?" His posture with Vashti was, "Let me show you my wife. Let me show her off." You see the difference? Let me show her off. Look, she pretty. He wanted to protect Esther. Whatever she needed. Whoever did it, come on now. Vashti, she cute. Conditional. That was a physical love. He loved Esther. And as a result, it was totally different than it was before. Totally different than his relationship with Vashti. He was willing to go the entire mile, Esther, the entire mile for her. When it's ordained by God, it's a different bond. It's a different declaration. It's a different love. It's just different. You can't explain it sometimes. You just know it's different. You just know it's different. And the counterfeits know it too. The enemy know it too. And let me tell you something. The reason why there's such a hard fight against that which God has ordained us, because the enemy knows that once we come together with who God has for us, there's nothing he can do to defeat that plan. I want to make sure I give you guys the point number one. I apologize, I typed the same one twice. But point number one was, when we adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse the past labels and release his identity for us over our lives. And let me tell you what I meant by that. Esther was an orphan. She was an orphan. She was poor. She was a handmaiden, all of that. So she was not fit to be the queen. You see what I'm saying? She wasn't fit to be the queen. She wasn't what nobody would have called the queen. She wasn't qualified. And sometimes we will let people disqualify us, or if they feel like we're not qualified, they feel like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm not. Maybe I can't do it. No, 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 no. The condition of her heart trumped the possessions of her hand. Okay. The condition of her heart, it was pure. She was pure. She was pure. He didn't see orphan. He didn't see servant. He didn't see poor. He didn't see maid. He didn't see none of that. He saw purity. When Esther was declared queen, she had previously, everything she had done previously didn't matter. It didn't matter. So when we adhere to God's plan and process, God will reverse those past labels and he will release his identity for us over our lives. Maybe you were promiscuous because you dealt with sexual abuse and you didn't understand that your body was a temple of the Holy Spirit. Okay. Maybe you were in addiction because the depth of the rejection and the abandonment and other, trauma was just far too heavy for you to carry. Maybe you suffer with the guilt and shame of abortion or adoption or murder or theft or homosexuality that you've done in your past, whatever it is. Hebrews 8 and 12 says, for I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. The problem is we remember. We remember. Isaiah 43 and 25 says, I am he who blots out your transgressions for my own sake and remembers your sin no more. He said it again. Because the enemy will hold it over our heads, and one of the greatest tricks is for him to keep us from pursuing purpose or God. One of the greatest tricks for him to keep us from doing that is to make us feel unworthy. I told you I didn't want to do the live stream. Why? I didn't say it was because I couldn't speak. I didn't say it was because I wasn't skilled. I said it was because I was fat. And what if I say the wrong thing and people gonna say this and say that? I didn't say I wasn't skilled. I didn't say I wasn't gifted. The enemy told me I was unworthy. He said, if ain't nobody gonna listen, if people around you don't listen, what you think the other people gonna listen for? But understand, he is the accuser of the brethren, and he does his job well. But God, when men cast us away and deem us to be unqualified to be used by God, unqualified to be loved by God, unqualified to be covered by his word, God steps in on our behalf. You understand? God steps in and says, you are worthy. You are worthy. And that's what I declare to you today. You are worthy, but there is a process. And if you tamper with the process, I admonish you that it will fall apart. The very thing that you were promised, the very thing that you want, it will fall apart. So allow it to remain in the oven. Take it out the oven, let it cool. So that when God flips it, you're ready. It's ready. He's ready. for you to move forward in purpose, and that you are fruitful and prosperous. So I hope this has been helpful. It certainly blessed my soul. And I'm going to stop the recording so that we can take any questions that we may have, and we'll go from there.